reason I'm limited, and again, I apologize, is weirdly I've been invited to USA House, and so there's a delegation of people there. Maybe it's for my execution. I don't know what this is, but so I have to be up there shortly. But I'm gonna say 3 quick things and then take a few questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, so in this room last year, everybody was wildly bullish because I was giving, poll questions and everyone was raising their hand. Bitcoin 150, Bitcoin 200, and so was I. I was wildly bullish, and so when it happens that everyone's wildly bullish, it doesn't go well. So this year, let's have a show of hands. Is Bitcoin going to 150 this year? Raise your hand if you think this. Okay, if you think we're going to have a bad year for Bitcoin, raise your hand. Yeah, see, so there's more people in the room today think we have Bitcoin. So maybe, because I'm more cautious this year, maybe we're the inverse. Maybe we'll have a good year. I don't know, but I would just tell you the things that I'm worried about is I think it's going to be very hard to get 60 votes in the United States Senate for the Clarity Act. And it's all tied to Donald Trump. So you have to understand when he's acting the way he's acting right now, they don't want to give him any wins, any which way, anyhow. And so even though that's a great win for our industry, it would be very important for us to help open up the floodgate of institutional demand from the money center banks. I think it's going to be a very hard thing to do. And you need 60 votes to get that done. So that's number one. Now again, I hope I'm wrong about that because trust me, no one wants it more than me. My colleague and friend Mike Novogratz is saying the opposite of what I'm saying. But I've gone down the list and I know the personalities of those senators. And I know what's at stake. Second thing I'm going to say is that for our industry, the Trump administration is way better than the Biden administration. But if you're going to launch meme coins and you're going to threaten to attack our allies, it's not really good for our industry. Okay, it's just going to create a lot of questions around his sanity, and it's going to create a lot of questions around whether or not the less partisan Democrats are going to want to side with the Trump administration to pass these bills. And so it's just something to keep in mind while this theatrical nonsense is taking place. Third thing I want to say, if you talk to your friends at Binance, Galaxy, Gemini, pick the place, Coinbase, the institutional demand is actually there now on a gross basis. Now, we've had a lot of whales selling. I think, Matt, you would confirm that, right?
Yep,
At
sure.
Bitwise, right? Matt gave me I've got this like Yeti from you, Matt, that my 7-year-old all he wants to do is drink out of the Yeti.
That's how we get them.
Yeah, he's got a Bitwise. He'll someday have a Bitwise account. But the demand is there. So if the whale's selling abates and we get the Clarity Act passed, then I do think we're going to have a really, really positive one. Okay, I'm going to take questions, if that's cool, and we'll talk about anything you guys want. Sports, religion, politics, Indiana University.
Can I start
Yes,
with one?
yeah, Wolfgang. Yes.
How do you explain to us what is happening in the US right now, besides crypto, just what Trump is doing? It's so absurd to us. Please explain, help us understand.
Well, it's a multifaceted thing. And so, number one, as Elon Musk pointed out, Trump is in the Epstein files. And he doesn't want you to know about the nefarious activity that he's had in the Epstein files. They've released 2% of the Epstein files with 98% to go. And so if you're bombing places or you're taking Maduro out of Venezuela, you're taking the gun off the bird of the Epstein files. That's number one. Number two, he's a lame duck. He's got about 10 months to go in his presidency where his presidency is still relevant. And that is driving him crazy. And so the way to stay relevant is to act like a reality television producer and produce reality television. And so what is reality television? If you've ever done it, it's a combination of 3 things and it works every time. It's drama. It's a setup between an antagonist and a protagonist. And then there's a conflict and some hysteria and some mudslinging. And then when you get to the third act, there's a resolution. And if you do that well, all the viewers are in sort of a Stockholm syndrome where they find themselves relieved, even though there's a maniac running things, that we have a non-maniacal resolution. And so the Greenland thing is a distraction. There's no American military that's gonna go up to Greenland and take Greenland from the Danish people. If that happens, Thune, McConnell, Barrasso, they've all gone to Trump, they've all gone to Hegseth and said, well, we're gonna impeach you. You can't go after and you can't attack our allies. Now, the people will push back and say, well, they don't have 20 votes in the Senate to impeach him. Not right now. But if you go and attack Greenland and you disavow the NATO treaty and you set up an economic trade war with the Europeans, which will happen. Okay, the Europeans don't want that, but they will start retaliatory tariffs, and then you could have dominoes fall where you start getting the Americans pulled out of the European bases that we have, which will change the entire national security footprint for America. So if you stop and look at it, it's not going to happen. But what could happen, and I think what is likely going to happen, is that there will be a negotiated treaty and a national security response in Greenland. We will probably, the Americans will probably get deeded land. Think of it like Guantanamo Bay, where we have some domain over that land. And we're probably going to ask the Danish government, alongside of NATO, to sign an agreement that the Russians and the Chinese won't be allowed to make investments in the area. And that was the big thing last year. If you remember, the Chinese wanted to put an airport there, and that really got the Americans rankled. So that's what I think the outcome is. But to get to that outcome, to create this type of hysteria, particularly if you're coming into Europe, you get all eyeballs on you. He wants that. He's always wanted that. He's motivated by two things. He's motivated by money, and he's motivated by attention. Okay, he's clipped $5 billion for himself in the first year. He's telling people he wants to make $20 billion by the end of the term, and I think he's going to do it. And they're not going to stop him because 50 years ago the Congress ceded power to the president. How did that happen? They voted on the Vietnam War. The American people did not want the Vietnam War. They voted out the congressional leaders that voted on the war. So they stopped voting on the wars, and they pushed everything into the War Powers Act, which gave the president emergency authority. And now it's very hard to get that power back. And so he's flexing as a non-gentleman on those guys, unlike an Obama or a Bush or you pick the president. And that's what's going on. That's his personality, that's his nature. But 10 months from today, those midterms will be resolved. He's a lame duck president. I predict he'll get worse in the subsequent 2 years. He's not going to get better in the subsequent 2 years. He's like, okay, this is my last 2 years. I'm going to go out in a nihilistic blaze of glory. You know, and that's who he is. And by the way, I want to be fair to him. There's some things that he does that does make sense, but the way he's doing it and with the level of histrionics that he's doing it with and the melodrama, it doesn't make sense. It's a very big distraction. I think the people in this room want to make money. I want to make money, and they want to generally get along with each other and figure out ways to use all the great innovation in our society to help the people around them. I think that's generally what the people want to do. He's not motivated by that. And those are the facts, yes.
You know, I would be interested in your view on the Chinese competition to the US, because we've heard lately, we're very active in the US as well, that the US is losing out on the technology side if it comes to strategic elements like hospitalization, etc. What do you think? Like, where does the journey go to?
So, I mean, if I understood the question broadly, so people in the back could hear it, it's about the competition with China and some of the issues related to rare earth minerals and different things related to our pharmaceuticals and hospital stuff related to the
quality of engineering,
software, rocket science tree, cyber, AI, all the different things. So, you know, remember this, if you are close to any European leaders, remember this. October 2nd, we're having Liberation Day in the US. He comes down from Mount Evil, like Orange Moses with the tablet, and we can't even understand what's on the tablet. And he's going to put a hurt on the Chinese. But then the Chinese look at him and say, okay, no problem. We make all your pharmaceuticals, us in India, and we've got all the rare earth minerals. And by the way, we have all the rare earth refineries. And so you need all that to run your equipment, your military stuff, all the other stuff. And so if you want to fight with us, no problem. We're going to ratchet up alongside of you. What did Trump do? He backed down. He backed down so much so that he's actually giving him the NVIDIA chips. You see what's going on? And so, yeah, but that happened. I'm not making it up. And the Europeans have to learn from that. You got to get a stiff back, and you got to get together in a room and say, okay, we're going to push back on him. It's the only thing he'll respond to. But the specific issue related to China is that they're ahead of us in some things. We're ahead of them in some things. It would be important for the Americans to cooperate with the Europeans. If you believe in free democracies and you believe in Western liberalism and the ideas around Western liberalism and capitalism, we need each other. There are 5.8 billion people in this world that we're living on that live in some type of autocratic regime. And so we need each other, whether we like it or not. An America First strategy that means America alone is a disaster for Europe, and it's a disaster for the United States. So they're ahead of us on certain things. We're ahead of them on others. We're definitely ahead of them on the military, and they know that, which is why they're not going to hit Taiwan anytime soon. But it's going to be a fight. Yes, Gaurav.
The Clarity Act brought in a big concern from American banks. If we end up having, if US ends up having yield-bearing stable coins, about 35% as predicted by the CEO of American Bank, the Bank of America, would flow out. What do you think of the idea of yield-bearing stable coins? Is it generally good to have like private entities, offshore entities like USDT and like the Tether entity to hold that kind of capital, which was actually preserved in well-regulated institutions that have held capital for ages?
So Gaurav, the problem is the banks want to hold back the technology because they want to protect their franchise. Makes sense. Who wouldn't want to do that? I'm sure the horse and carriage industry would have said, hey, no horseless carriages, let's leave it that way. There wasn't a, I gotta go?
No, you go.
Oh, okay. Okay, so, John, how you doing? So you have to understand, nobody in the government wanted Uber. No Western city, no mayor, no taxi commission wanted Uber. But Uber was a better technology, and the people wanted Uber, and so they got Uber. In the United States, how many people know what Citizens United is? Raise your hand if you know what that is. Okay, so very few people. January of 2010, the Supreme Court rendered a decision. Justice Scalia wrote the decision and said, if you have money in the United States, you can spend an unlimited amount of money in politics. You can form a political action committee. You want to spend $100 million on a candidate, $100 million on a cause, absolutely no problem. That's your First Amendment right. And what it did was it's created a separate but equal democracy. It's actually something that has to ultimately be reversed, because in the last 16 years since that decision, go look at the legislative agenda of the US Congress. It's skewed to big business, big pharma, big banking, and the lobbyists are ruling the roost, and they're spending billions of dollars lobbying those people, and the lobbyists generally get what they want. And so the American Banking Association very smugly went into that deal and said, we don't want any yield on the stable coins, which will prevent that 35% flow out of the banks. They could have said, okay, we've got competition, and so we're going to create our own stable coins, and we're going to have our own yield, and so we're not going to care about that, and we'll fight it out with them. But the easy way out was to do the lobbyist way. But as I tried to point out, and I think Brian Armstrong retweeted what I wrote, if you have the Chinese have a digital yuan, and they're offering yield on their stablecoin rails system, and you're now competing in Latin America where they have defunct fiat currencies, or Africa, same issue, what rail system are they going to use? The one that has yield on it, or the one that doesn't have yield on it? And so the lobbying community is putting the United States at a competitive disadvantage in financial services, which over the last 125 years, the United States has held the mantle of leadership in financial services. So this is a miscalculation. This is why Brian is against it. But for me, because I have my 11-day PhD in Washington scumbaggery, I know how this place works, take the deal. Because what happens is the search for perfection impedes progress. And you don't want to do that here. You just want to get this deal done and then hope in the next legislative session you can have an add-on or an improvement to the deal. Because, let me tell you something. If the Republicans lose the House if Trump keeps up his nonsense, I more or less believe that they will, you're not gonna see the Clarity Act pass anytime soon. So get the deal done, which will open up the floodgate of institutional demand. There'll be spot trading for Bitcoin at places like JP Morgan, and it'll change the whole industry and break the 4-year cycle. Why don't I take one more question? I can't take any more questions. All right, one more question in the back, sorry.
Very short. When do you run for president?
No, me, no, I'm running for re-election in my marriage, okay, that was an easy one. Let's take the next question. She believes in castration too, so we're not running for president. Good.
So, in the crypto space, the pace of innovation is, it far exceeds what regulation is able to keep up with, right?
Yes.
And I'm from UBS, and we're a traditional bank, as you know, and one of the things we're always up against is we have all of these clients or prospects who've created wealth in very, very interesting and innovative ways, but sometimes we're not able to bank them because the frameworks don't exist, and it's not within our risk appetite because, there are expectations from a bank like UBS.
So you just made the biggest positive statement for the Clarity Act. Because if you can get the legislation passed and it can get accepted in Europe, which typically US legislation and regulation does, then there'll be a formation of guidelines which will allow your bank and many other banks to enter the space and stay innovative.
So just to follow up to my question then, I'm familiar with what you're doing, in the Telegram network space. So in
Yes.
the future, do you think the distribution of financial services will happen through these platforms and banks would lose out? What kind of
I do.
vision do you have?
So, Enzo's here, put your hand up, Enzo. So Enzo and I are working with Brittany Kaiser on a Telegram or a ton digital asset treasury, because I believe that network is going to be incredibly valuable. And once we get this legislation cleared up, there will be tokens like ton that are used in that network, which will create tremendous amounts of relatively frictionless transaction activity. The only thing I will say is if you look at MasterCard and Visa, they're very, very clever what they're doing. They're trying to create a lot of rewards. And so we'll have to figure that out as well, Enzo. But you got to get the Clarity Act passed, and then you'll have a much easier job. Guys, thank you. I got to go to this other event. If you don't see me, I'm in front of you.